Rodney Orr, hope you're having a great Friday afternoon. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
Doing great, Ryan. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, and want to spend a lot of time talking Alabama Crimson Tide football, and maybe I'll go back to last night. Anything that grabs you from what Nick Saban said in that press conference?
Oh, wow. Ryan, again, I just think overall, talking about the progress that's being made, I thought that, one thing that we really haven't talked about much, as you know, for some reason we overlook it until something bad happens, but that's the place kickers. And he seems really pleased with the development of and the progress made by Austin Jones and Joseph Bulovas. Both those guys have been really consistent, I think, in fall camp, and that's a big area. Not only that, but also the punting game, obviously, with J.K. Scott, perhaps the greatest punter to ever play here at Alabama. Skylar DeLong looks like he's in good position to handle those chores, but I think that's always going to be a big part of your team in the return game as well. So I think they've got a chance to be really good on doing that, Ryan, but that certainly was one thing that stood out to me off the top of my head.
Well, Rodney, I want to go back because you talked about Austin Jones and Joseph Bulovas there. But even a word that really we have not been associated with kickers is what Nick Saban said yesterday. I think he used the word consistent. And to hear that come out of his mouth, I was like, hold on a minute. I mean, should we alert the press? I mean, do we alert the AP? I mean, do we run this, on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, ESPN? He said consistent associated with kickers here in Tuscaloosa. That's a unique word attached to kickers. We haven't known that for a while.
We always talk about a two-quarterback system here. That's all they've been talking about since when? January 8th. But Ryan, he was talking last night about using both of these guys. It's place kickers possibly. Also, both having maybe a role kicking off in terms of maybe one guy does something better than the other guy in that regard. But I'll say this, Ryan, again, consistency. Yeah, that's something that if Alabama has a guy that can hit that 50-yarder, that's just another weapon that they've got. Because listen, we've talked about it. I think this offense has a chance to be really good. I think Alabama has a chance to score a lot of points. And right now, I would probably say they're going to need to score some points. Not that the defense is going to be that bad, not what I'm saying, but I do think there's going to be some challenges there, at least early in the year, that they're going to have to score some points.
Yeah, and to even go back, I know Nick Saban was a report on ESPN and talked about that. I think he looks at this team saying that this might be a little bit different style Alabama team. And like you said, it's not that the defense is going to be, not your typical Nick Saban defense in November, but early on, they may be challenged in some of that areas as they try to get some experience under their belt as they travel throughout this 2018 season.
Yeah, sure. I think they've got a chance to be really, really good up front, even though they've lost the linebackers, Terrell Lewis and Chris Allen. But I still think they've got a chance, if everybody can stay healthy, to be really, really dominant up front. Ryan, you look at Isaiah Buggs, Raekwon Davis, Quentin Williams, the development of some of the other guys like Brian Ray and so forth. And then, I think they've got two of the best elite middle linebackers in all of college football, and Dylan Moses and, Mac Wilson, but at the same time, they don't have much depth. In the secondary, that's a big question. A lot of busted coverages, a lot of mental mistakes. Nick Saban related that to us, last week after the scrimmage. So they've got some shoring up to do in terms of replacing all the experience they lost last year. Again, I think it's an extremely athletic group that they have to choose from back there, but at the same time, Ryan, not a lot of experience. So, the pass rush could really help them out considerably on the back end, but, again, just looking at them right now, the inexperience could certainly become an issue early on in the season.
Let me go to, and you mentioned Isaiah Buggs. I want to spend some more time on that defensive side of the football. I was watching some of the Rolling with the Tide earlier, and you look at Isaiah Buggs, not only just comfortable with his role, but you could see how – you ever been around one of those players that it just seems like he's always happy? And that was what I took away from one of those Rolling with the Tide this past Wednesday's episode was Isaiah Buggs, and kind of that star, and the guy that always kind of lightens the mood a little bit, gets everybody to laugh. But you look at Isaiah Buggs, the impact he is expected to have on this team, and will also be one of those leaders on that side of the football. I don't know if we talk enough. Raekwon Davis is a superstar, we get that, but the other guy, Isaiah Buggs, is going to have a very crucial role.
Yeah. Isaiah Buggs, a lot of people may not remember that he was the #1 junior college defensive lineman in the country a couple of years ago. Everyone thought he was probably headed to LSU. And, once again, Nick Saban broke their hearts down there when he signed with Alabama. He's a native of Ruston, Louisiana, and, just extraordinarily highly regarded player. Ryan came in last year. I think it takes sometimes the transition period for even junior college players to kind of get a feel for what it really takes to play on this level, especially at a place like Alabama that's so demanding. And I think you started to see Buggs in the Texas A&M game last year, what was that, early October, start to kind of take a little bit of a step. And, I think he was a little banged up at times last year, but you could see the potential and why he was considered so highly regarded coming out of JUCO. And I think this year you're going to see Isaiah Buggs. I really expect him to take the next step. I really think, too, that Quinnen Williams, the redshirt sophomore, I think you'll see him kind of take that next step. He was a playmaker every time he got an opportunity to get in the game last year as a redshirt freshman. But we know about Raekwon Davis. We talked about the depth before with guys like LeBron Ray, younger players like a Fedarian Mathis. I think he's a guy that we ought to keep an eye on, that I think eventually he's going to be someone up front that could, give some snaps. But, a guy that we haven't really talked about too much, Ryan, is Tabita Musika, the JUCO transfer from out in college, out in the college out in California that he transferred in from. I think when you look at him, he's about a 6'1", 6'2" plugger in the middle at about 330, 340 pounds. That I think he's going to be a guy that's going to give Alabama, the snaps that they need in the rotation to kind of keep everybody fresh. But he's a guy that's going to be really strong against the run.
Do you feel like that we have answered some of those questions in the defensive back? It seems like when we talk about Trayvon Diggs, Savion Smith, Patrick Surtain Jr., Xavier McKinney, when we talk about Shaheem Carter is going to be a big part of Deontay Thompson. Do you feel like they're pretty comfortable in their different formations in that secondary going into these final few days before Louisville?
Well, I thought that, from Nick Saban's comments last week that after the scrimmage, that it's not that he's not confident in their ability. It's just the experience factor and getting the right guys on the field. I do think there could be some competition there with Deontay Thompson and Shy Carter, safety maybe, because Shy can play all those different positions, whether star, safety, corner. He's a really versatile guy. Deontay Thompson has great ability, I think. I think he's got a chance to be a really good player. I think obviously this camp, you haven't heard as much buzz about him, Ryan. So I think Nick Saban really wants these guys in terms of the competition to be ready to go out there and play. So I still think there's some stuff that sounds like it's up in the air. You mentioned the corners. I think Savion Smith and Trayvon Diggs certainly are two guys there. I do think Xavier McKinney is going to be a star player at some point. When I say star player, I don't mean star position. I mean an outstanding player. So he's a guy to really keep an eye on too. But I think they're trying to nail down, some of the other spots. And you know what, Ryan? Just like last year when Trayvon Diggs started the Florida State game, you really never know. There may be a guy that starts this game and a guy that comes off the bench like Levi Wallace did last year to step in for Diggs, and may step in for one of these guys and become a really good player this year. So I think there's still some questions.
Rodney, I don't know anybody that was higher when we talk about Jaylen Waddle. I mean, you have been a guy that ever since the beginning when we talk about Jaylen Waddle, all indication was that he had an awesome scrimmage last Saturday inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. Jaylen Waddle already turning heads here in Tuscaloosa in his first few weeks here at the Capstone.
Yeah, Jaylen Waddle. Was very excited about him from last summer. Not this past summer, the summer before. Obviously, when he came to camp, and heard all the things he had done there. He's got a little bit of that acceleration like Amari Cooper had. He's got some elusiveness, kind of similar to David Palmer. He can return punts. Be very exciting there. No, Ryan, I don't know exactly what we're going to see. Like you were talking about the depth chart that we'll get on Monday at the press conference. I'm not really sure what it'll say, and if Jaylen Waddle will be back there on that first punt return, but I do think you will see him in this game returning punt at some point. I'll be surprised if he doesn't at least return one or two in this game. Maybe even that first one. We'll see what happens. But like you said, Ryan, I mean, everyone I've talked to from the scrimmage said he absolutely put on a show. One guy told me, said, hey, he's not going to be a star. He is going to be a superstar. I mean, that's just kind of the ability. Now, listen, I know that they like to play down expectations. Again, he's going to be a freshman. That was a scrimmage. But all indications are he's everything that we thought he was.
Rodney, let me ask you, when we talk about the number one topic of conversation, we talk about quarterbacks. Let me ask you, flip the role just a little bit. And I know all of us want to know here in Tuscaloosa, when we talk about, us, we would love to see that media chart on Monday. Give us some type of announcement with quarterbacks. But let me ask you, let's flip the script a little bit. Don't you think Bobby Petrino, I'm sure he's trying to prepare for both of those guys. And if you spend a few minutes looking at both of them, you're trying to – because it's two different style of play. You got one guy that's very mobile that can really do some things. And I know Tua Tagovailoa's got some mobility as well. But don't you think they would love to also know this quarterback? Maybe Nick Saban is very smart of kind of playing this close to the vest and kind of keeping this out there as he released earlier to ESPN that it's really, really close, even though I don't think that's the indication that we're getting. It's a good signal to send to Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no reason to tip your hand right now. I mean, obviously Louisville has to prepare for both guys, as you mentioned. And that's not easy to do. I mean, when you're talking about different styles and a guy that is likely to take off at any point, run the football like Jalen Hurts does, can do the things he does with his legs, and he's not totally incompetent as a passer either. I mean, he's got the ability to the consistency part of it in terms of the throwing. So you can't certainly sell him short there either, because he has shown in the past he can strike deep. There's no question about that. And so again, then you've got Tua Tagovailoa, and the thing about him, the nightmare about him is the fact that Ryan, I mean, he can just challenge you every part of the field. I mean, he can see so many. He can see the field so well, and he can go to different receivers in different areas so quickly that, I mean, he's hard to defend. And guess what happens when you can do that? You can do what Alabama really wants to do, and that's line up and run the football. And I mean, it should make it. It actually creates better opportunities for the running backs when you can legitimately spread the field like that, and it also threaten the field like that. It also helps the offensive line as well.
Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com, TiderInsider.com. Final couple of days of practice before we begin game week. Tons of coverage on TI, TV, WVUA with Gary Harris each Tuesday, 6:30, 10:30 on the replay, but also the great forums. And I know the anticipation of Alabama's season arriving here in about 8 days. I know your message board, the electricity just beginning to build. It's all over the place. Anybody that talks Alabama Crimson Tide football, and I know you do it there as well as anybody, and the message boards and the forums and the exchanges of information, you can feel the anxiety as we approach another campaign under Nick Saban. The 12th year. How many people would have ever guessed Nick Saban would stay for 12 years, Rodney? I think we would have probably taken the under on that if somebody had said, okay, he's going to stay 12 years. I don't think many people saw him staying here 12 years, but he's been able to do it, and he's got this program clicking on all cylinders.
No question, Ryan. I think there's some people that doubted he'd be here 5 years, to be honest with you. You remember that as well when he first got here. That was pretty much what a lot of the pundits were saying. Well, it's not that he's there, it's how long will he be there. So it's certainly been great, and I know that this is Ryan, all your listeners are preparing for a big year, and we're not far away.